This was equally true of both men and women. Today, this has practically changed. There is no longer this type of thing. The apprenticeship in the family is very, very unlikely. Positions and employments of mature persons are impermanent, insecure, and usually unpleasant. Therefore, each has to start and build a complete career without benefit of parental guidance or parental assistance or assistance through the educational structure. So each person has to work it out for himself. Now, if he can reach a certain age, say around 20, without being completely contaminated, he has a good chance of working out something worthwhile. He can be an individual and do his thing instead of being bound into something. I read in the paper not long ago that Walt Disney on one occasion told a friend that he was a grade school dropout. Disney had practically no formal education, but he did rather well because he did his thing. He did what he wanted to do, and he didn't depend upon schooling to obliterate or deform or distort his own feelings on these matters. And this is true in a great many instances. If the person can reach the time of decision in life without having this decision corrupted, he will probably be able to make a useful and important contribution to society. And education may help him. It may be able to give him a fuller understanding of practical ways of helping. Education may provide him with the instruments of service, which will be of value to him. But it is the instinct within himself to serve that must be preserved, or else the techniques are worse than useless, and will end again in exploitation. Having decided in some sense of the word and by some internal adjustment that the individual can be a person, an individual in a society of mass calculations and collective pressures, he can then, as far as his daily life is concerned, do whatever is necessary to meet the responsibilities of living. The individual who finds a way of avoiding responsibility is in very bad way also, because this avoidance becomes habit-forming, and the person becomes a completely inadequate individual. But assuming that he is reasonably doing the things he is equipped to do, he can then build a life around whatever is necessary for his own growth. His job may take a certain percentage of his life, but a job will not destroy his inner life if it has vitality of its own. A job that destroys the inner life is a job in which the inner life was not strong enough to survive the pressure of outward circumstances. But if the individual within himself has character or conscience or integrity or has ideals or perhaps certain gifts and abilities which do not fit into his economic pattern, these things can be preserved, they can be developed, and if necessary, they can become the second careers after retirement. But there's no need for the idealism in the individual to die because of the materialism of his environment. He can survive it if he has anything inside of himself. He has a perfect power to be a person. He has the natural, inalienable right to live and die according to principles. Now, if his principles are not adequate, if he has compromised them too much, then perhaps he will find that his mistakes will cost him heavily in freedom and in advancement. But if the person is as God created him, is a natural human being, bringing into this life unfinished business, both assets and liabilities, and always equipped to meet the day if he uses the equipment, he can have a very valuable life regardless of the pressure of circumstances. Under those conditions, he will have no need for the development of any narcotic habit. He will not need to escape from frustration because he has already inwardly strengthened his inner life so that he is doing in his own character what he really wants to do. And when this happens, the probabilities of drug addiction are greatly reduced. It is also true that if the person has a fixed vision from within his own consciousness of what is proper for him, he will not need to depend upon encouragement by bottled goods. He has the encouragement within his own life. He has his own way of growing. It is not necessary for him to block his memories. It's not necessary for him to refuse to express temperamental natures which are themselves constructive and reasonable. So we find that our narcotic problem is largely a result of too much vacuum inside of the person. Not enough basic value to meet the pressures of life. Now, life is going to have suffering. It's going to have problems. But these problems and these sufferings are apt to be significant, whereas the sufferings of narcotic addicts have only one remedial factor, and that is to prove to the individual that he is destroying himself. I think we have another very interesting point to make in connection with this problem of getting oneself in shape of some kind and in some way. Most people today who are interested in better things in life have a realization that there are esoteric factors in the human compound. We realize, for instance, that man lives not only in the visible world, but in an invisible environment. That this invisible environment, or the etheric diffusion in which the physical matter of life exists, is under the rulership of the lunar principle. And it is this principle by means of which the constant vacillation of energies and emotions and thoughts this motion is maintained. In this also, according to the ancients, and perhaps they were right, who knows, this borderline between the objective and the subjective is also the sphere of ghosts. It is the sphere of beings that never had existence in the physical world, for there is no plane or stratum of nature that is not inhabited. It is also a place where, according to the ancients, earthbound spirits wandered about in all kinds of unpleasant conditions, where the individual who has been bound to some negative situation holds on to the situation after death and does not even know that he is dead. He continues to be the possessed or obsessed being that he was in life. Now, in this environment also, we have the source of a great deal of psychic phenomena. We are beginning to recognize that we can no longer throw away the possibility of psychic phenomena. We are no longer able to say that these metaphysical situations do not exist. Day after day, we get more supporting evidence that psychism is a reality. But we also get some rather unpleasant witnesses to the problem. We find out that most of this psychism is rather detrimental to our daily life. A psychic experience which is merely an embodiment of ambition may make us feel that we are too big for ordinary labors, that we have been given a special dispensation, and then we start off on a long program of self-illusion. And disillusionment comes later and is hard. But it is also true, beyond doubt, that the Greeks and Egyptians were partly correct, at least, when they pointed out that all forms of narcotics formed a connection between the physical body and the etheric realm in which it exists. That this was a strange realm of pressures, that these pressures could be thought forms, emotion forms, vibratory centers of energy, by which the individual is as though in a great ocean filled with living creatures of its own.